Ladies and gentlemen, picture this. It's the year 1966, and General Motors decides they've had enough of gasoline. So they take a perfectly good GMC handy van, gut it like a fish, and stuff it with a fuel cell system so futuristic, National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, probably looked at it and went, "Hey, you guys okay over there?" Thus, the General Motors Electrovan was born, the world's first hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. And just like early investors in Bitcoin back in the year 2011, it was way ahead of its time. Before we dive into this tale of high-voltage insanity, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. We've got more crazy car stories coming your way, and you won't want to miss them. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty. The 1966 General Motors Electrovan wasn't just a quirky little van, it was a futuristic machine, way ahead of its time. It was equipped with a 32-kilowatt fuel cell system that provided continuous power. For comparison, that's like driving around with the energy equivalent of your kitchen blender running non-stop. But hey, this bad boy could also peak at a whopping 160 kilowatts when it needed a little extra push, probably for those high-speed chases in the future, or just a trip to the grocery store. What's really wild is the fact that it ran on cryogenic hydrogen and oxygen, a fuel combination that sounds like something out of a NASA mission. Seriously, this van had tanks so sophisticated they were reminiscent of what was used to send astronauts to the moon. And speaking of astronauts, the entire fuel cell technology was borrowed from NASA's Apollo program. Imagine that, NASA's technology, but instead of rocketing to space, we're cruising around town in style. Let's talk specs, because I know you love those details. The Electrovan weighed a hefty 7,100 pounds. Yep, you heard that right, 7,100 pounds, which is nearly twice the weight of a standard GMC handy van. The extra weight came from the fuel cells and cryogenic tanks, but don't worry, this beast could still hit 70 miles per hour. A bit slow by today's standards, but keep in mind, this was 1966. We were still getting used to putting wheels on electric cars. It had a 0 to 60 miles per hour acceleration time of about 30 seconds. Now, before you say that's pretty slow, remember, this was a prototype, and its 150-mile range per charge was no joke back then. If you were a General Motors engineer in 1966, you probably felt like you were driving the future. Now let's talk about the price. In 1966, General Motors reportedly spent a whopping $252,500 United States dollars on the Electrovan. I can hear you gasping through the screen, and hey, I would too. But here's the kicker. The cost was largely because of the platinum used in the fuel cell. This wasn't your run-of-the-mill van. This was the moonshot of electric vehicles. When you adjust for inflation, that price tag would be around $2,500,000 United States dollars today. And to think I used to complain about the price of a decent sports car. Fun fact, the Electrovan was only tested within the safety confines of General Motors' private facilities, thanks to the safety risks associated with handling cryogenic hydrogen and oxygen. After General Motors decided they had proven their point, the van was tucked away and forgotten until the year 2001, when it resurfaced as part of General Motors' Heritage Collection. It's now a museum piece, a relic of a time when automakers weren't afraid to try something absolutely bonkers. If you're still here, I believe you're as fascinated by the Electrovan as I am. In hindsight, the Electrovan was a glimpse into the future, proving that fuel cells could work in cars. It just took the rest of the world a few decades to catch up. So if you ever see a hydrogen-powered car on the road today, just remember, General Motors did it first, back when color television was still a novelty.